Peace, King.
What's up, bro?
Blessings, man. So happy to be here. You know, we just chopping it up. You just talked about, like, this is Franklin K. Lane, AOIT High School. That's where we first met.
Yes, sir.
Right now, we're going to take a walk down memory lane, like you
Yeah.
just said.
Yo, bro.
You know, it's crazy,
Just looking
man.
around, bro.
Yeah.
Like, memory lane for real, bro. This is crazy. 7 years ago.
Right.
It's been 7 years since I graduated, bro. This is crazy. Word.
And we've both evolved and come a long way and learned a lot. So, you know, I just really want to take it back to like elementary, middle school. Like, what made you choose this as a school that you wanted to come to? And, you know, what was your mindset as you were entering high school? And just take me on a journey from 9th to 12th grade. Like, who were you when you started? And then
Sheesh.
who did you leave the school as?
Damn. Thinking back, when I was in junior high school, so I come from a family that wasn't heavy in sports, right? So
Yeah.
I never was really an athlete. I played like a little flag football in
Yeah.
the neighborhood, and we had a flag football team tournament actually in junior high school. I went
Yeah.
to IS 302. And I knew Franklin K. Lane had a football team.
Right.
And I was like, I want to play for the football team, which was the only reason why I applied for Lane. And also, everyone else went downtown Brooklyn. People went to automotive, Jeff,
Right.
Maxwell.
Right.
So I knew like I wanted something different. Like I
Right.
didn't want to go where everybody else was going.
Right.
Nobody was coming to Lane except for me and one other person
Right.
who we ended up actually being coming here together, but we really not even that cool anymore. But so that was dope. Damn. Yeah, that was definitely what brought me to Lane. It was
Yeah.
football. And then when I got here, I played football, but I ended up falling in love with track.
Okay.
And track really became
Was that in
like,
9th grade as soon as you came into the
Um,
building?
Yeah. As soon as I came into the building, I remember meeting Coach Warren, signing up for the football team. But you know what happened? We showed up, classes start September?
Yeah.
So we met Coach Jason, I think, early September.
Okay.
Had to do cross country to get in shape.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, it was history.
So did you go to Coach Warren and Coach Jason, or did they approach you like, listen, man, you need to sign up for this. You look like you got some potential. Do you remember how that happened?
You know what? I do. So I started off with JV football.
Uh-huh.
I remember seeing Coach Jason around, and he's like, yo, man, you need to come run some track. Like, just try it. So that at that time, they was encouraging all the football players to get into work out off season. And, you know, you'll be faster, you'll be bigger, you'll be stronger. And I tried it. It was indoor season. I did indoor, I did outdoor, and I loved it, bro.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time, like, yes, during a relay, it's a team sport, but track is more a fight within yourself, right?
Right.
Like, you running track, it's like we all tired at the same time.
Right.
And some of us may be at the same speed, but when you get to that 300 mark of a 400, it's about heart,
Right.
right? Like, do you got it or you don't?
Right.
And I think that challenge every time, that moment of I'm about to get on the track and my stomach is bubbling and I'm
Right.
nervous, it just gave me that, I felt alive, like, all right, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, for real.
Yeah. Nice. So that's track, right? Now, did you ever end up playing on the football team?
Yeah, so I played JV.
Y'all were undefeated, right?
Yes, we was at one point.
Yeah.
Definitely was. So I played receiver. I played special teams, and then I played cornerback as well. But I don't
Okay.
think I started until like my second year.
Right.
That's when I started. And then after the second year, I stopped playing football, and I
All
fully
right.
committed to track.
Okay.
It's a graduation, facts. And remember, I graduated a year early.
Right.
Because me and Kyle graduated a year early, so.
Nice. So for me as a teacher, I eventually coached football and basketball, but I
Yep.
did that after you played, right?
Yep.
So I didn't really know Jermaine, the athlete, but I knew Jermaine, the student, and the young man, you know, who would be in the hallways, the
Yes,
lunchroom,
sir.
the classrooms. So, like, everything you shared was what happened outside of the school building.
Mm-hmm.
So take me on a journey through the school building. Who were you when you stepped in as a 9th grader? And then who did you become by the time you were a 12th grader?
Looking back, bro, I was lost.
Uh-huh.
For real, like I was lost, but I had common sense, I believe. Like
Right.
I knew a lot about the streets, right? Like growing up in East New York, Brooklyn. My dad had just came home for the first time, so
All right, so when you say came home, right,
oh
everybody
yeah,
watching might
yeah,
not
you're right, you're
know what you mean.
right.
So just break that down. What?
So when I graduated from junior high school, that 8th grade, my dad had just came home from prison. He was gone, I think, I think he did like maybe 3, 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So I know he missed my elementary school graduation when I left 5th grade, and by 8th grade, I know he was home.
Right.
So I went into high school. That was new grounds, right? Like I'm growing into the man that I'm becoming. My dad just came home from prison, and now I'm in high school, right?
Right.
Like I'm finding my identity. I think it's just a struggle of who I was. Like academics wasn't really my strong suit. I didn't know what I wanted out of life. College wasn't what I was looking forward to,
Right.
right? Like I was surrounded by a lot of people that was coming home from jail. A lot of my friends was dying. So that's all I knew, right? Like even being in Lane, one of my friends died, Speedy, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
So that's
Speedy
all I
was a
knew.
great guy.
Great guy, you know what I'm saying? Great guy, a really good friend of mine. So I wasn't thinking outside of that. My whole existence was around track. Like
Right.
that's the only thing that made me feel alive, like I was doing something in life. Cause I was like I was getting a 65, 75, just making it, you know what
Right.
I'm saying? And then, but I always value education. Like I felt like that was gonna be my way out the hood, right?
Right.
Like out of struggle, out of poverty. So I just always knew no matter what, get your schoolwork done.
Right.
And I was in your class, so
Right.
history was always my thing. Global history because you made it cool. And English was always my thing too. I loved to write. I just couldn't get with the math
Right.
and the sciences. It was just never something that I really appreciated at the time. But I think it was definitely a lot of learning and growing. Cause seeing my friends out here going through what they was going through, in and out of jail, some dying, it was like I knew I had to do something different. Which I think by 12th grade, my grades was all right, which got me into a community college. I got denied by all my SUNY schools,
Yeah.
so it didn't work out for me, which wasn't an issue because I really learned from my CUNY experiences that set the foundation for everything else.
So right there at that moment, right? A lot of students, I'm not sure that it's over 50%, right, of students from New York City public schools, they don't make it past their first year in community college, right? So what was it that made you want to continue to pursue college? So thinking about while you were in high school, what made you want to say, you know what, I'm going to go this route? And then when you did get there, what made you stick with it?
So reflecting, I remember at Lane, we had an exercise, and I still have it on my Google Drive, and this is how I remember. We had an exercise about what you want to be when you grow up. And I actually said I wanted to be a lawyer because my parents split when I was like 3 years old.
Yeah.
So I was going back and forth to family court.
Right.
So I was like, when I get older, I want to be a lawyer. Like I want to work with students that's in the same situation like myself, youth. And I remember writing about it. Facts. And then I never went off to become a lawyer, right? But I think it was the idea of I had to work with youth. I had to finish because my parents never finished high school, right? Like my dad didn't graduate. So I had to finish. And on top of that, there was pressure, right? A lot of people saw me and I was put in a box since a very young age. Like he's gonna end up dead or go to jail. Like I had a dean tell me that before in my my middle school. And I'll never forget, like we'll walk into the school and he'd just start playing that Kanye West flashing lights in the morning. Facts. So I had a chip on my shoulder. And that's what got me through. So I'm like, yo, I need to graduate. I have to graduate. And that's why I graduated in 3 years.
Yeah, I remember that.
But plus, my parents was going through whatever they was going through. So I got left back twice in first grade because of my family situation.
Right.
And the second year, it was on me. But I was going back and forth from here to down south. And it was just a lot. So it happened. And I always felt like I was behind.
Right.
And I needed to catch up because all my peers is already 2 years ahead of me.
Right.
So I had to finish. And then when I got to college, the relationship that we built, Mr. Wilbeck, like other teachers that was in Lane, I was able to come back. Like, yo, remember I came back, like, yo, bro, I need help with this. This is tough.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in Wilbeck office, like, yo, I don't,
Right.
it was hard. but I think it required me to get outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
And when my first year of college was tough for me
Right.
because I had to learn how to ask for help.
Right.
It's okay to ask questions and raise
Right.
your hand in the
Right.
classroom, right? Because
Right.
in high school, you like, yo, bro, shut up, put your hand down.
Yeah.
You know, like, but now you older, you paying
Right.
for this, you got a goal, you trying to do something, so you have to put that extra work in.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've always admired about you. You are very active in making sure that you find the right people that can support
Yeah.
you in whatever it is that you're trying to do or whatever it is that you need. And a lot of times, you know, and this is something that I'm still working on. I think I'm pretty good at it. People tell me I'm good at it, but I also know there's times when I hold myself back, and it's just
Yeah.
saying, look, I need some support with this, or can I get some help doing whatever idea I may have in my mind? And it could be very tiring. And I think that's a skill that's often overlooked.
Yeah.
Being able to recognize who can support you and then following through and
Yes.
receiving that support.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, right? Like, it's definitely not easy because at the time, I think looking back, my self-esteem as a young
Right.
man, right? Like, I wasn't that confident. I may seem confident, you've
Right.
been in the gym, you're an athlete, but inside you scared to ask for help,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like, it was, I don't want to feel stupid.
Yeah,
Or I
yeah,
don't want to
yeah.
ask a dumb question. Like, those are the things that's going through my mind at the time. And then I started to realize, like, yo, hold on. If I fail this class,
Right.
I'll be here by myself retaking it. So why am I worried about what everybody else thinking in this class and they're going to
Right.
move on? I
Right.
need to move on too.
Right.
So I think that's what really helped. Like, I was really blessed to find the right support system, and I was in the ASAP program.
What's that stand for?
So the ASAP program is at, I think, pretty much all CUNY schools
Uh-huh.
now. It's a 2-year program. Well, you go to a 2-year school, you get into the program. They provided Metro cards for me
Right.
to go back and forth. I think it was like 3 swipes or unlimited Metro cards.
Mm.
A book stipend every semester, which
Okay.
really helped because independent first generation college student. So I really needed that. And the most important part, like, those are important, but the most important part was the one-to-one.
Mm.
So you had to meet with a counselor every month.
Yeah.
And we going through grades, midterms, what you need help with,
Yeah.
encouraging tutoring. We had our own tutoring.
Yeah.
So those things really helped learning about those services. Bro, my first year of college, my GPA dropped to a 2.1.
Mm.
But I ended up graduating with a 3.2.
Okay.
And I never knew it was even possible.
Right.
But I just put in the work.
Right.
And I knew, like, from here, I want to go away. I need to experience going away because if I don't go away, I feel like I'm not going to make it.
Right.
Because the environment,
Right.
it's a toxic environment.
Right.
You know, so.
All right. So now you spoke about going away, right? So you went from Queensboro, and I'll let you tell the story about your school. Tell me, where did you go, right? What school did you end up going to, and what was your experience like there? What did you learn? Who were you when you showed up on campus the first day, and who were you when you left and you graduated from your
Man.
school?
Definitely a 360 turn by the time I left, for sure.
Yeah.
I think Queensboro, I was rough around the edges, right? Like, I
Right.
was figuring it out. That was my foundation for scholarship. I mean, for college. Like, it taught me how to study,
Uh-huh.
how to ask for help, how to find resources, how to step outside my comfort zone, meet friends,
Right.
right? Meet people. And once I got that under control, Brockport to me was a little more, the technical part was easy,
Okay.
right? But I think I started to learn different things because in Franklin K. Lane, it's majority people of color, right?
Right.
Black and brown, everywhere you go.
Right.
9 times out of 10. Same thing elementary school, same thing middle school, same thing in the hood around.
Right.
When I got to Brockport, it was different. Now I'm in an environment where I'm part of the minority,
Right.
where in my classroom, there's about maybe 3, 4, 5 people of color if we lucky.
Right.
Right? Like, you got a bug on you, brother.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you know what I'm
Thank
saying?
you.
But
Yeah.
3 to 4 people of color if you lucky.
Right.
Right? So that changed things.
Yeah.
And then I went through a personal situation where I started to realize systemic issues.
Yeah.
And how black students and brown students was oppressed on college campuses.
Right.
And it wasn't a conversation that was happening
Right.
often. And it was like the colleges opened the doors for us to come here, But now we having conversations about how to better support us here. When you the one who invited us here, right?
Right.
So I remember my first year there was a dude who wrote "Niggas deserve to die" on the dorms.
Yeah.
I'm not used to that.
Right.
Where I come from, you do something like that, we fighting.
Right.
So it took a lot for me to learn how to move through this new environment. And it taught me that look at what's going on outside of Brooklyn.
Right.
Outside of Lane. This is really happening around the world.
Right.
Around the country, like racism exists.
Right.
But sometimes I don't think you realize that when you so much among others that look like you, that may think like you and operate the way that you do. Right? And now I'm meeting other people of color that we don't think the same way.
Right.
We come from different environments, right? Different socioeconomic classes. The way we view the world is different.
Right.
So that exposure helped me with my growth, my learning, my patience, my listening, my understanding, right? Not always jumping to conclusions. Because it's like we all coming from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different realities. So it was a lot. It wasn't an easy journey. I definitely had some traumas from that, right?
Yeah.
But it made me the leader that I am today.
Right.
And I think being at Brockport turned me into a better leader because now I'm advocating for people.
Yeah.
I'm advocating for situations that's constantly like looked under the rug.
Right.
An example of that is, so when I went away to Brockport, actually, my dad was back incarcerated at this time. So I went through my whole undergraduate, first gen, independent, no support, just me.
Right.
And mentors along the way, is including yourself.
Right.
So that's all I came with.
Right.
And I'm just trying to figure it out. And I went through an issue with financial aid where, you know, you need your parents' tax forms.
Yeah.
My dad got full custody of me. He's in a prison system.
Right.
So how can I provide you tax forms for someone that's incarcerated? I can't.
Right.
And I was told, well, look, you got to take some time off until you get that figured out.
Right.
I was in my last year.
Right.
So I had to get a note from his lawyer. I had to come back to Lane and get help from College Steps. Felix was helping me at the time.
And I know those college offices, they take forever to burst off.
Everything.
You take you weeks to get something through, and you on the phone, you online in there. So I know that's a frustrating, and just commend you for sticking with it.
Yes, and that right there, it tore me because here I am again trying where I come from, knowing a lot of us don't make it this far. And here this system just slammed the door in my face and said, you don't belong here. Because why isn't there something in writing for a situation like this?
Right.
Because a person like me that come from this environment with my father in the prison system, I'm not expected to be here. And that's how I felt. And that was personal to me. Then I said, what about all the other students that's going through the same thing that may not have access or resources in the way that I do? Or that's not as vocal. Then they fall through the cracks. And that is what took me on my policy journey and education policy really that I've been on. Because I knew like there is some problems in the education system that need to be fixed. Right? And it's constantly impacting Black and brown students. So here I am in higher ed, right? Post-secondary success, what we always talk about, and there's still more systems impacting my growth. And it's not like it stopped once I left high school and the dream of go to college is gonna be all right. That wasn't real for me. I was struggling. Like I was going through it, and then you having an identity crisis. Right? So I'm starting my therapy. Even getting comfortable with that, right? Like starting it, walking away from it.
So I want to dive into the therapy, right? And we're gonna get into where you at now, and we're gonna tell that whole story. And before we get there, because I'm gonna make some connections to my experience with therapy,
for sure.
I want to share some of the parallels from my life that led me to this school. And then we're gonna meet back up at now. So
let's do it.
So for me, you know, I grew up in Brooklyn too, Canarsie, single mother household. And one of the toughest things for me growing up is I had, I knew a lot of people in the neighborhood. I was a basketball player, so I was kind of protected, right? You know, it's like, oh, nah, he's good. He don't, you know, if I didn't want to indulge in some of the gang activity and certain things happening, you know, I always had that basketball player identity that kept me safe and respected by my peers and the dudes older than me in the community. And I was like, yo, these guys are geniuses. Rappers, poets, just the types of conversations, the analysis of the world, the books that they read in, the conversations that I'm having were no different than with my friends who were going to school consistently and doing all of the right things, right? And I just wondered, like, the older I got, I'm like, what's the difference between my friend who's not going to school and doing what they got to do and myself, right? Society sees them as a dropout
Right.
or somebody who got 55s, never passed a class, or don't have enough credits to graduate high school or go on to college. And it always stuck with me. And I always said that the only way I could see myself waking up early in the morning to get to work and feel inspired is if I know I'm going to help somebody or create a space where somebody can grow.
Right.
And you were in an environment that was predominantly white when you were in college. My experience started in high school. My high school was predominantly white, Catholic high
Wow.
school in Manhattan. And
Wow.
the things that I would hear, 9th, 10th grade, I used to make me angry. Used to get into verbal
Right.
spats, sometimes like light little physical altercations, not real fights, but you know, somebody will break it up.
Yeah.
And I was frustrated by some of the things that I would hear. And it made me want to learn more. So I had an internship at the Supreme Court when I was going into either the 11th or 12th grade.
Right.
And all I'm seeing is black and brown people on trial. I may see a white person here and there. And I wanted to be a lawyer too, just like you. And while I'm sitting there, I'm wondering, why is it like this? And I worked with a judge that summer and her law clerk. And I just, my mind was being cultivated. I didn't realize at the time, but my mind was being cultivated to constantly think about how I can play a role in reforming the system.
Right. Right.
So when I got to college, right, I wanted to learn a lot more about history. While I was in high school, actually during the time of the internship, because I wanted to have rebuttals for these white students while I was in high school.
Right.
That I could just shut down their arguments, their ignorant statements. Just wanted to shut it down with some intellect.
Right.
Right. I was learning a lot about Cornel West. I was learning a lot about the Black Panthers, Huey P. Newton.
Right.
So I wanted to be an articulate young brother who could just shut down those arguments. So I'll fast forward now to college. I was playing basketball. Then I ended up transferring out to Stony Brook, and I graduated out there. And it just gave me a more holistic understanding of how systems work and how I could play a role in dismantling
Right.
those systems. So I was working for a beer company, packing out beer.
Yeah.
And I could have been a salesman, but that wasn't for me. So I ended up applying to the New York City Teaching Fellows. I got in, and then I said, okay, here's my shot. So I remember when I came here for my interview, I went home, I told my mom, I said, I like that school. The principal reminded me of one of my aunts, right? Older black woman.
Right.
And while I was there, while I started here, I always felt at home. A lot of my classmates left the Teacher Fellows or left the profession early
Right.
because they didn't have a leader who they could relate to, who they felt like they could be themselves around, and who they felt would allow their voice to be heard. But I always felt that having a black woman as my principal and a black woman who understood me. And now that translated to my experience as your teacher, right? Because I saw your evolution from 9th to 12th grade.
Right.
And while I'm teaching, I started at 23 years old. Right now, you're how old?
26.
26, right? So just think about
Wow.
your mindset at 23, right? I was learning a lot too,
Right.
right? I was figuring myself out, figuring out where I
Real.
wanted to go in life. And one of the things that I always knew that I wanted to keep at the center was letting y'all know that I don't got it all figured out either.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make class fun. And I think I was good instructionally. I got better at time. But the one thing I was great at was building relationships and making students feel confident about
sure.
themselves and feeling they could do anything.
For sure.
And 7 years in the school, having an opportunity to meet students like you just helped me become a better man. 7 years after that, I became a teacher leadership coach. And this is my 5th year doing that. And I work with over 50 New York City public high schools. And the leadership is really what makes a difference in that school succeeding or not. In
Yep.
this building, right? You have 4 schools, the same demographic of students, but vastly different outcomes.
Yep.
Our school's doing pretty well. The other schools, and that all came down
Yep.
to the leadership.
Yep, I remember.
And when I go to these schools now, when I coach teacher leaders, sometimes when they're struggling, it's because the leadership is not allowing them to feel like their voice is heard.
Yep.
Like they can contribute, right, in a meaningful fashion. And that's just something that I always want to keep with me, is how can I hold myself accountable as a leader
Right.
and not blame and point fingers at others,
Right.
and hear the voices of others and let them contribute to whatever my vision is.
Yep.
And also supporting their vision. So being vulnerable, having integrity, making sure you keep that work-life balance, and always being empathetic is very important.
Yes, sir.
That's the VIBE. Vulnerability, integrity, balance, and empathy.
Wow.
Got to always have a positive vibe.
Yo, that's amazing.
So, I know I fast forwarded through a lot of years, but it was therapeutic teaching y'all. So now you mentioned therapy. Talk to me about how therapy has impacted who you are now, and dive in a little bit more into who the neighborhood role model is.
Okay. So therapy was so interesting, right, in the beginning. So I'll start with the beginning because I don't want it to seem as if it's so easy now, right?
Right.
Because it's always a struggle in the
Right.
beginning. I remember I got to Brockport, one of my mentors was like, you should definitely go see a therapist. And I pushed it off for maybe a few months. And I said, all right, cool. I go in, there's a black woman, first time. And it was just something about the session for me, right? I just felt like, I always used to say, what's the point of me going to a therapist? I'm going to go in there with a bag of problems and just pour them on the table, and they're going to be like, yo, this person need help.
Yeah, I used to say, I'm
Yeah.
not crazy, ain't nothing
You see
wrong
what I'm
with me.
saying?
I'm good. Like,
Right. And I think I felt like I had so much going on that it was too much for a therapist to even deal with. But that wasn't real, right? That was a story that I was telling myself.
Right.
But I went for the first time, had my first session, I ain't go back for 2 years. Right? I was like, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, F that, I ain't going back.
Right.
And then I went back, and it was cool. I was like, all right, we getting somewhere.
Right.
I'm opening up a little bit. I'm learning more. It was a cruise. Then I changed my therapist, right? I was like, all right, let's try something else. Now I got a man,
Right.
but it was a white man.
Right.
No problem at the time. Now I realize, okay, maybe I need a male therapist, right? Because I also need somebody that understands things from a male's lens, right? From a male perspective. But I also felt like, again, here's someone that won't understand me because he's not a black man.
Yeah.
But we had progress,
Right.
right? Like about relationships, families. I started realizing things like during my leadership, there were certain things that would piss me off for like administration.
Right.
And one of my therapists connected it to the times that I was let down from family, right? Like it was a trigger.
Right.
So having those, I guess, being able to identify those things and connecting it to what triggered it is powerful.
Right.
Right? Because now you understand what's ticking you off and where it's
Right.
coming from. You can control it. You understand it. Once you identify it, you can work through it.
Right.
Right? So that's when I started to realize like, yo, therapy really works.
Right.
Right? But I had the huge realization my last year that therapy works, but it really works because whatever you give is what you get. Right? So a lot of times, right, like we go in there, we manipulate, we get through the session, we tell them what they want to hear. And that's what I was doing for a very long time. And then I started to realize like, yo, bro, you wasting your time, you wasting your money.
Right.
Right? And when I really started to be vulnerable, when I really started to be open and I really committed to it,
Right.
I got so much more out of it.
Right.
Right? And then now I can't go without a therapist. Right? So I think it's been maybe I want to say 4 or 5 years consistent.
Right.
You know? And then I went to grad school, got a therapist right away. Like no one had to tell me. I didn't need motivation. I knew this is part of my starter kit in order for me to be successful. Right? Because I'm still learning, I'm still unpacking, I'm still growing, and there's a lot of trauma there.
Right.
And even when things are good, you still need therapy, right? Like Even when I'm in a
That's a
session, like,
fact.
yo, I don't have anything to talk about this
Right.
because I'm not stressed today.
Right.
And it's like, you end up talking about something and you like, yo, that's crazy. Like, I don't need it to be a bad day.
Right.
And then therapy is teaching me now, like, yo, it's okay to not have a bad week.
Right.
It's okay to not have 100 things to do.
Right.
It's okay to be at peace.
Right.
It's okay to be successful
Right.
and have a new job and not have to stress about something.
Right.
Right? But it's like, it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
It's a constant challenge, and I think it's really perspective.
Yeah.
So that's definitely my journey with therapy. And I finally, by the grace of God, now I have a black man therapist.
Okay.
And I think this is, well, black and Latino. So I think this is the most perfect, best therapy time I ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And me and this brother been rocking for about a year and some change now.
Uh-huh.
So
I connected so much to a lot of the things that you just said, right? So what age was it? Because I'm gonna tell my story, but I'm gonna start from the age that I was when I started. How old were you when you first went to therapy?
shit. My first time in therapy, I was in second, third grade.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
growing up, I had anger issues.
Right.
So I used to get into a lot of stuff. So I've been in therapy from second grade
Yeah.
to the moment I graduated from Lane
Okay.
with Mr. Wilbeck.
Yeah.
He was my counselor. And then when I got to college, it was like, all right,
Yeah.
you're on your own. And then I started
Yeah.
to figure it out. So when I really got serious about therapy on my own as a, I guess, adult or a young man, I had to be about 20,
20?
21, 18,
nice.
around something like that.
Independently. For me, I think my first time was probably like around 27. And it started, she's currently my wife. At the time, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And for like maybe about 2 years before that, she would say, she never said, yo, you need therapy, like in a negative way. She always said, look, as you look around, think about who would you identify as a mentor in your life.
Right.
That's a black man. And I couldn't really point to many.
Nope.
Not to say that I had none, but to just
hard.
call up on a regular basis, there wasn't a count. I could count on one hand. And she was saying that, I think you'll be able to dig into who you are and who you want to become by going to therapy. And I say, what? Like, it's not there. Ain't nothing wrong with me. Same thing you said. I'm not crazy. And I think you're trying to tell me something. It's like you're trying to send me subliminals. You're trying to manipulate it, so make me go. So I never listened. And then we were having some relationship issues. And around 27, I don't remember exactly what it was that made me go. But I said, all right, you know what? I'll go. Maybe it's something that I was reading, because and like I said, teaching was therapeutic.
Yeah.
So she would often make connections. Like sometimes we might be having a little debate or argument, and she'll say, well, what would you say to your basketball player about holding himself accountable? Because you was just telling me a story about how you had to make him think about his actions and how his actions are leading to these outcomes. And I'm like, oh, nah, you got me there, right? Because I'm always, you know how I was as a teacher. Students probably, or a lot of people probably look at me like I got it all together. But she was she was probably outside of maybe my closest family members, she's the first person to hold me accountable to say, look, you are doing great things, but don't get gassed.
Right.
There's so much more to you and who you could become as a man if you unpack
Right.
some of those feelings and some of the things, like you said, at the root cause of your actions.
Yes.
So we went to this white woman, and we went to maybe about 5-6 sessions, and we actually ended up breaking up after that.
It's crazy. Wow.
Because I think, speaking for myself, I dig so deep into, thinking about my dad not being there, right? Thinking about my relationship with my mom, which is very positive.
Right.
And just being a black man here in America, I said, you know what? Like, I can't think straight. Like, we both agreed, like, we needed time apart, just space to think, right? Because a lot of times you just keep moving at a certain pace, and you don't take time to reflect, and then things just become toxic, and you're
Right.
not being honest with each other.
Yeah.
And one thing I always value was she would be very transparent with me up front and let me know how she's feeling. She wouldn't wait for things to occur to say, well, remember when you did this last week? Nah, she gonna talk about it now. And it used to annoy me, and it still does sometimes, right? But I recognize that's what I need in order to be able to understand
Right.
what she needs. And it's up to me to, especially at that time, I had to figure out, well, she's saying what she wants and what she needs. And I like the idea of being in a relationship, but I didn't actually follow through with the things that it came with. And I have needs and she has needs.
Yeah.
We both have needs.
For sure.
So if I'm saying, oh, I want to be in this relationship, every time something happens and I'm like, no, I want to, well, if my actions aren't adding up to that, then I got to be the one to say, you know what, I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to work on things, and we're going to work on our communication and improve, because life is about continuously improving.
Right.
So after her, after that therapist, you know, we broke up. We ended up getting back together. We went to a black male therapist, went to 3 sessions, but it's kind of far. So I went 3 times and I didn't go back. She came with me once. And one of the most valuable lessons I learned there was to not just talk about real issues when we're arguing. When we just relaxing, chilling, having a good time, it's not saying you ruin the vibe, but you could say, you know, like, can we just talk about, you know, some, like, how we want to communicate better with each other
Right.
when our minds are at peace. And those conversations manifest a lot more positivity than when you're in that mind frame of, you know what, like, I'm mad at you, I'm frustrated.
Right.
That's what I learned there. Then I took a break. I just started going back to therapy in December.
Okay.
And Zoom helped me out a lot. I'm definitely making some excuses because I could have found my way to therapy still. But Zoom, man, I've been going every week,
Yeah.
every other week.
Yeah.
And it's been a great help for me,
Yeah,
man. Just
bro.
really, like you said, unpacking, getting to the root of why am I making these decisions? Why am I not holding myself accountable? How can I continue to work on those things that I could look at somebody else and think that that I have to be that way. Or this is what it means to be a man. Or this is what men do. This is what I do.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And being confident with that and not feeling like I have to prove to other people that I'm what other people would define as a man. This is who I am as a husband.
Yeah.
This is who I am as a man. And I am going to continuously stand on that and not feel like I have to prove something to somebody else and get caught up in my ego.
Right. And it's definitely a work in progress, right? It's a day-to-day fight.
Right.
Because there's so many outside factors that can contaminate that.
Right.
Right? Like, you know, like, all right, this is who I am. I'm standing on it, but it's so much outside noise.
Right.
And you got society that showed us and taught us, like, yo, this is how men show up.
Right.
This is how men should be.
Right.
Right? And even for myself, just spending a lot of time constantly unpacking that and standing on these values and holding other men accountable as well. Like, yo, bro, you tripping.
Right.
Like, you was taught that, but you know better, bro.
Right.
Right? And that's how we continue to be better kings and build better kings. And if we're not doing that, how can we do the work, the education, the policy work, the community leading work, the activism? We can't do that if we're not doing this. You know what I'm saying? So definitely agree, my brother.
Nah, that's a big fact. Holding each other accountable,
Yes, sir.
And recognizing that we need to redefine
Yes.
what we were taught.
Yes, sir.
And you know, I just want to thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you.
You know,
bro.
congratulations. Right now you're in your doctoral program. And you know, I'm just excited to see what you do next. And I'm just grateful to be able to have this conversation with you and that we're still here, alive, present, and have the opportunity you know, to change the world, man. And I'm glad my children will have somebody like you to look up to. And we're going to meet again soon, my brother.
Bro, man, thank you for being a dope teacher, an incredible teacher, bro. Like, one thing you always taught us was to have an open mind.
Yeah.
understand things from different perspectives, regardless of what it is, bro.
Right.
And I remember we said something like the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
He was like, yo, bro, there's no limit.
Right.
And you was the teacher, bro.
Right.
That was just solid, still solid from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that, bro. I needed that.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? And how me and Kyle would say, like, yo, you and Mr. Wilbeck and Coach Jason, bro, was like our dads of school.
Right.
Right? And just created a lane for us to step into that manhood that we needed to step into to be the young men that we needed to be at the time to get through lane.
Right.
But also to get through college.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And when we got there, we got other tools.
Right.
But y'all gave us those foundational tools and skills that we needed to get through the door.
Right.
And I'm thankful for that, bro.
Yeah.
For real, King.
Thank you, my brother.
Word.
Appreciate you. I learned, look, they say there's a contradiction, right? The student-teacher contradiction. We got to simultaneously be both. So I'm teaching, but I'm a student at the same time.
Yeah.
And a closed door is invisible to an open mind.
Bro. Word.
Bless.
King.
Ah.
That was fire, bro.